Hi everyone, I'm Yumu from Susan's family. Today, I'm going to show you a elf straight needle doll. For this electronic tutorial, you can search on the website, susud.com, to view it. This doll is divided into 3 parts. The main part, facial features and hair, and clothes. The main part includes the legs, body, head, and arms. We will knit from the bottom upwards, then sew it together, and add stuffing. Let's start with the legs. They are divided into left and right legs. The left and right here refer to the doll's own left and right. Both use the backward loop cast-on method. Knit back and forth. Start with the right leg. Now, let's look at the chart. In the chart, a V with a vertical line on its upper right side, and the stitch key on the left is for K1 TBL stitches. It means to work 1 knit stitch, and 1 K1 TBL stitch in the same stitch. A single vertical line stands for a knit stitch, to make the chart less dense. The blank squares in the chart also represent knit stitches. Now, please watch me demonstrate the specific knitting method. First, cast on. In actual knitting, 2 threads are combined and work together. We can take 1 thread from the center of the yarn ball, and another from its outer ring. Then hold them together as 1 thread for knitting. For your convenience to see more clearly, I will use a single strand of cotton yarn for demonstration. For specific yarn, color schemes, and needle sizes, please refer to the detail page of our product and the paper instructions. Before casting on, you need to leave a yarn tail of about 30 cm in length. Make a slip knit with the yarn. And insert your needle into it. This is the first stitch. Place the reserved yarn tail underneath. Then wrap the yarn around your fingers clockwise. And place it onto the left needle. Slightly tighten it. This is the second stitch. Repeat this process to cast on. Pay attention, the casting on can be slightly tight. After completing, check the stitch count. Everyone, take a look. This is what the sample swatch looks like after finishing the cast on. Next, work row 1. Hang the yarn on your right hand. The first row consists of vertical stitch keys, which means knit all the loops with knit stitches. After you finish, the first row is complete. If the last loop is a bit loose, you can gently tighten the beginning tail of the yarn. We'll consider this first row as the right side of the entire piece. That is, the side where the yarn tail is on the left. Now continue with the second row. In the chart, this row starts from left to right, because the chart shows the texture of the right side of the fabric. On the wrong side, you need to knit for the purl stitches, and purl for the knit stitches. Turn the piece over and move it to your left hand. Hang the yarn with your right hand. Work all stitches as purl stitches. Make sure the yarn is placed above the needle. This completes the second row. Now proceed to the third row. In the chart, this row is read from right to left. The first stitch has a V shape with one vertical line on the right side, and on the left side, there's a K1 TBL stitch key. Insert the right needle into the front one strand of the first loop. Pull it through. Then insert the right needle into the back one strand of the first loop. Pull it through. Release the loop from the left needle at the same time. This means in the same loop, you have worked one knit stitch and one K1 TBL stitch, increasing by one stitch. Continue working. Insert the right needle into the front one strand of the loop on the left needle. Yarn over and pull through. Then insert the right needle into the back one strand of the loop on the left needle. Yarn over and pull through. Release the loop. This increases by one stitch again. Continue working in this way. Knit until there is one stitch remaining on the left side. When you reach the corresponding position, work one knit stitch. You can check the number of loops at this point. The third row is now completed. For the next rows 4 to 6, work knit stitches on the right side. Work purl stitches on the wrong side. Please complete these rows. Now let's move on to row 7. Start with 5 knit stitches. Then work one K2 tog stitch with the right needle from front to back. Insert into the first 2 loops of the left needle. And work one knit stitch. 1 K2 tog stitch is now complete. You can see the loop on the left side is at the top. For convenience in explanation, we will simply call it K2 TOG moving forward. Continue with one more K2 tog stitch. The right needle goes from front to back. Insert into the first 2 loops of the left needle. And work one knit stitch. 1 K2 tog stitch is now done. Work one more K2 tog stitch. One knit stitch. 3 K2 tog stitches. After completing, work knit stitches one by one accordingly. Finish this row. Row 7 is now complete. Next, I'll show you how to count the rows. Each braid represents one row. The crossed braid at the very bottom is from the starting stitches. Start counting upwards from the braid above it. Don't forget to include the small braids. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Plus, the loops on the needle also count as one row. That means we've completed 7 rows here. Next, I'll explain the remaining parts knitting using a small sample. With fewer rows, the focus is on explaining the method. For rows 8 to 13, continue decreasing stitches at the corresponding positions on the right side. On the wrong side, work into each stitch with purl. For the remaining rows, work evenly. Finish the last row on the wrong side. Leave a yarn tail of about 10 centimeters and cut it off. To prevent the yarn tail from slipping, you can tie the end with a slip knot. The loops can be left unprocessed for now. This is the small sample after completing the right leg. Next, I will use this sample to explain the left leg's knitting process. It also has fewer rows. For the casting on and rows 1 to 6, the technique matches the corresponding positions on the right leg, rows 7 to 12. Decrease stitches on the right side. The decreasing positions are different from those on the right leg. Then continue working evenly. Refer to the previous demonstration. Follow the chart to complete the corresponding rows for the left leg. Pay attention, after finishing the last row, you need to increase stitches. Here, we will use the backwards loop method to add stitches. Start by increasing the first stitch. Place your right index finger above the yarn. Rotate it clockwise to form a crossing loop. Slip this loop onto the needle. Slightly tighten. This is the backwards loop increase. Continue and add one more stitch. Place your index finger above the yarn. Yarn over. Then pull it upwards onto the right needle. The backwards loop increase is done. Finally, work one more backwards loop increase. Now the left leg is complete. Next, we'll learn about the body and head. Take a look at the finished product. The body and head are knitted back and forth, continuing from the leg. The new stitch used here is SKP. Please watch as I demonstrate the specific knitting method. Start with the first row of the body. Use the yarn from the left leg. Work knit stitches into the backwards loop increase. Pay attention not to pull the yarn too tight. Try to keep it as loose as possible while you knit. Don't let the distance between the two needles be too far apart. This will prevent the transition yarn in the middle from becoming too long. If you end up with a longer segment of yarn, it's a normal occurrence. It won't affect your knitting. If during the knitting process, a loop accidentally falls off the left needle, you can take the small segment of yarn between these two needles and wrap it clockwise in a loop from the middle. Then place it back onto the left needle. The loop will be restored. Continue to finish the 3 stitches with the backwards loop increase method. Then knit 1 by 1 accordingly. After completing, continue adding stitches, using the backwards loop increase method on the needle. Add a total of 4 stitches. Once done, take out the right leg. Knit 1 by 1 accordingly. You can knit the first stitch a little tighter. After finishing, continue with the backwards loop and add 3 stitches. The first row is now completed. You can place a marker on the loop on the needle. Later, count the row numbers of the body part starting from the braid at the marker. Continue with the second row. Work the purl stitch 1 by 1 accordingly. The second row is now completed. For the following rows 3 to 20, work evenly. Everyone, please complete these rows. Next, start working the 21st row. Refer to the chart. First, work the corresponding number of knit stitches. Then, knit 1 SKPO stitch. With the right needle, knitwise. Slip the next stitch on the left needle without knitting it. After that, knit 1 stitch. Then, use the left needle to pick up the slipped stitch. Pass it over the stitch on the left and slip it off. That completes 1 SKPO stitch. This will be referred to as SKPO moving forward. Continue with 1 knit stitch. Then, knit 1 K2 tog. Follow with the corresponding number of knit stitches. Next, knit 1 skp. With the right needle, slip the next stitch on the left needle without knitting it. After that, knit 1 stitch. Then, use the left needle to pick up the slipped stitch. Pass it over the stitch on the left and slip it off. That completes 1 skp. Continue referring to the chart to finish this row. Row 21 is now complete. For the coming rows on the back of the body, continue knitting back and forth. You will need to decrease at the corresponding positions. The specific decrease positions and methods can be found by referring to the charts. Everyone finishes it. Next, I will demonstrate the head knitting using a sample swatch. Continue knitting back and forth with the same yarn from the body. After completing row 1, don't forget to place a marker to mark the row number. On the wrong side, you still walk the corresponding purl stitches. On the right side, you need to increase stitches in the first few rows. The increase method is similar to the one used for the legs. Then continue knitting evenly. Perform decreases in the last few rows. All these stitch techniques have been demonstrated before. You can complete it by referring to the chart. And on the right side for the last row. After completion, leave a tail of about 40 cm and cut the yarn. That concludes the explanation for the body and head knitting. Next, we'll learn how to knit the arms. I'll explain using a swatch as an example. The method for knitting the arms is similar to that of the legs. Similarly, you use 2 threads of yarn, held together for this part. Before casting on, leave a tail of about 30 cm. Increase stitches at the corresponding rows. Then continue knitting evenly. End on the wrong side for the last row. Finally, leave a tail of about 20 cm and cut the yarn. There are 2 arms in total. Just refer to the chart and complete it. Take a look, everyone. This is what the swatch looks like after finishing the arms. Finally, sew it together, and add stuffing. You can remove the stitch markers. Start by hiding the short yarn tails reserved from the legs on the wrong side. Tie a slight knot. You can sew a few extra stitches if needed. Trim off any excess tails. Then, thread the reserved yarn tail into a sewing needle. Make sure the right side of the fabric is facing you. Pass it through the loops on the needle from right to left. Slip the needle off. Pull the yarn tight. Close the opening to finish. Next, we will sew the pieces together. You can see a row of small braids along the edge of the fabric. There are horizontal lines next to them. Pick up one thread like this. Pass through. Then pick up the small horizontal line next to the braid on the other side. Pass through. Continue sewing alternately by picking up these small horizontal lines. You can pick up one at a time, or you can pick up two at a time. After sewing a few stitches, pull the thread tight. Mindful that the thread should not be too tight. It's okay if it's slightly loose. Continue following this method. Pick up the small horizontal lines and sew. When you encounter KFB stitch textures, simply sew around the approximate position. Try to match up the decrease stitch positions as much as possible. After finishing sewing the head, fluff up the stuffing and insert it inside. The stuffing should be firm and evenly distributed. Once the head is properly stuffed, continue sewing the body section. Stuff while sewing. After completing the body section, tie off the yarn tail, and weave it in neatly. Proceed to sew the legs next. Thread the beginning tail of one leg onto a sewing needle. Pass it through each segment of the starting stitches. Pull tight to close the opening. Then follow the previous sewing method. Sew upward along both sides of the leg. Be sure to add stuffing as you sew. The stuffing should be even and in appropriate amounts. After finishing the side seams, sew together the increase points on one side of the body. Pick up these line segments where the increases were made. Sew at the crossing positions. Try to avoid large gaps at the corners. Make slight adjustments if needed. Once completed, tie off and weave in the ends. Sew and stuff the other leg using the same method. When there's a little distance left, ensure the seam is firmly stuffed based on the actual situation. Then sew together the increase points. Sew and secure the middle position. Then tie a knot and cut the yarn. Next, sew the arms. Use the ending yarn tail to close the opening of the arm. The method is similar to closing the head. Thread the needle from the other end of the yarn tail. Gently tighten it. Leave the yarn tail for now, then use the starting yarn tail. Close the opening using the same method as for the leg. Then proceed with the sewing. Add stuffing while sewing. Note that for the beauty of the main part, try to use less stuffing at the end of the arm. You can fill and fit it against the main part as you go. The shoulder shouldn't be too wide. After completing the seam, tidy up the starting yarn tail. Everyone, go ahead and finish it. Everyone, take a look. This is what the sample looks like after the arm is sewn together. Finally, sew the arm to the body. Thread the ending yarn tail into a yarn needle. Position the sewing position toward the body. Align the top with the decrease stitches on the body. Specifically, place it between the first and second decreases. First, second. Match and sew together the corresponding parts of the fabric pieces. Be mindful not to sew too much. This will ensure not to affect the wearing of clothes. Finally, weave in the yarn tails. Sew the other arm symmetrically. Everyone can now complete it. That concludes the main part explanation. Next, we'll make the facial features and hair. Start with the nose. Cut a long yarn tail from the yarn for main part. Thread one strand into a sewing needle. Fold it in half. The sample swatch color is random. Locate the center of the front side of the main part. This is the side where the toes are pointing. You can see below the head. There is a row of larger braids. Count upwards from the large braid. And find the 10th row. Identify the stitch that is centered. You can mark it with a thin needle if needed. Insert the yarn through the braid on the right side of the marked position. Exit through the braid on the left side of the marked position. Leave a little yarn tail. Sew twice. This will create 4 strands on the fabric surface. Tie off at the ending. Insert from the insertion point on the right side, through to the inside of the fabric. Adjust it properly. Trim excess tail. That's how you make the nose. Now count upwards from above the nose. Find the 3rd row. Make a mark in the 2nd braid from the right. Pass the previous yarn through the center behind the head. Exiting at the bottommost marked point. Leave a little yarn tail. Then insert through the middle of the stitch that is 1 braid apart on the right side. Exit at an adjacent position behind. Pull tight. This forms the eye socket. Tie a double knot. Weave in the yarn tails. That completes one eye socket. Make the other eye socket symmetrically using the same method. Tuck in all yarn tails securely. Now the eye sockets are done. Glue on the eyes over the eye sockets. Press firmly to ensure it's secure. Cover the marks of the eye sockets completely. The eyes are now complete. Let's move on to making the mouth. Take out the corresponding yarn. Thread a small strand through the sewing needle. The sample swatch will be in random colors. Locate the third braid below the nose. Mark it. Draw the yarn through any position on the right side of the marked braid. Insert it into the braid on the left side of the mark. Exit from the side. Use glue to secure the curve with a slight indentation. You can adjust the arc according to your preference. After securing it firmly, trim off the excess yarn tail. The mouth is now complete. Next, let's learn how to make the ears. Take a look at the finished product. There are 2 ears in total. Both are knitted back and forth from the starting stitches. Finally, sew them onto both sides of the head. The new stitch techniques used are slip stitch purlwise and S2 close stitch. Please watch as I demonstrate the specific knit method. First, leave a 15 cm tail of yarn for sewing. Then, begin with casting on. For the first row, directly match the knit stitch. After completing it, move on to the second row. The stitch key indicates a slip stitch purlwise. When working on the wrong side, slip stitch knitwise. Place the right needle above the yarn, from front to back. Insert it into the first loop on the left needle. Do not knit. Transfer the loops to the right needle. The slip stitch knitwise is now complete. Next, work a purl stitch. Pay attention to wrapping the yarn above the needle before knitting. The second row is done. Continue with the third row. The stitch key indicates a slip stitch purlwise. Slip the stitch purlwise. Place the right needle below the yarn. From back to front. Insert into the first loop. Slip without knitting. The slip stitch purlwise is now complete. Then place the yarn behind. Continue to knit stitches to finish this row. The third row is done. You can see that the edge of the fabric forms a knot like this. Now proceed with the fourth row. You can also start by referring to the texture to work the slip stitch accordingly. The texture below is purl. Slip stitch knitwise. Insert from front to back into the first loop. Pick up the strand without knitting. The slip stitch knitwise is complete. Then work the purl stitches to finish this row. The fourth row is done. Continue with the fifth row. The first stitch is a knit texture, slip stitch purlwise. Place the needle below the yarn. Slip the first loop without knitting. The slip stitch purlwise is done. Move the yarn to the back. Continue knitting stitches to finish this row. Repeat this process. Finish the 6th row. Now knit the 7th row. Start with the corresponding slip stitch. Two knit stitches. Then knit 1 S2 crochet stitch. Insert the right needle from left to right to slip the 2 stitches knitwise on the left without knitting. Next, knit 1 stitch. After completing, use the left needle. Pick up the 2 slipped stitches from before. Pass them over the stitch on the left and slip it off. The 1 S2 crochet stitch is now completed. This stitch effectively decreases 2 stitches. Continue with the knit stitch. Row 7 is completed. Refer to the chart and knit row 8. Continue knitting row 9. Start with the corresponding slip stitch. Knit 1 stitch. 1 S2 crochet stitch. Begin with the right needle, inserting it from left to right to slip the 2 stitches on the left without knitting. Then knit 1 stitch. Then pick up the 2 loops that were not worked. Pass them over the stitch on the left and slip it down. The S2 crochet stitch is now done. Continue to finish this row. Row 9 is completed. For the following rows, continue knitting back and forth. Decrease at the corresponding position on the right side. On the first stitch of each right side row, work slip stitch purlwise. On the first stitch of each wrong side row, work slip stitch knitwise. On the last row, there is no need to work the slip stitch. Just knit the S2 crochet stitch. There will be 1 loop left at the end. Leave a 10 cm tail and break the yarn. Stretch the loop. Pass the yarn tail through the loop. Pull tight. Hide the yarn tail along the texture on the wrong side. Finish it up. One ear is now completed. Work the other ear in the same way. Sew the ears onto both sides of the head. At a height parallel to the eyes. Thread the starting tail into a sewing needle. Turn the wrong side up. Fold the edges of the cast-on row towards the center. Place it with the right side facing back in the corresponding position. Sew a few stitches to secure well. Pay attention between the folding positions. Leave a slight gap. Secure, tie off, and weave in the ends neatly. Sew the other ear symmetrically on the other side. Everyone can now complete it. That concludes the explanation for the ears. Finally, make the hair. Take a piece of corresponding yarn. The sample swatch color is random. Thread one strand of yarn into the sewing needle. On the side where the facial features are made, about 1 centimeter above the eyes, create the bangs. First, locate the position where the head is closed up. Determine a point about 1 centimeter in front of it. Insert the needle. Exit about 1 centimeter above the eyes. Leave a little yarn tail. Then insert from the point above. Exit at the adjacent position in front. Make sure the yarn sticks close to the fabric. That makes one strand of bangs. Next, use the point above as the center. Thread through the line below. On both sides, go roughly to the middle position between the eyes and ears. Then, thread downward to create the sidburn positions. The specific shape and density of the bangs can be adjusted according to your preference. You can thread through the same spot on this row a few times. The threading is relatively sparse in the sample swatch here. When making it for real, you can sew it more densely. If you run out of yarn in the middle, tuck the yarn tail into the fabric. You can go through a few more times. Trim excess tail. The starting yarn tail should also be tucked into the fabric. Then, pick up the new yarn and continue sewing. If the insertion position above becomes less neat due to too much threading, you can slightly offset the threading towards the sides. After completing the straight bangs section, move on to making the sideburns part. Here, I'll demonstrate the method for making the sideburns with a small sample. Simply thread downwards. Go down to about the level of the mouth. The specific density of the sideburns can be adjusted according to your own preference. Make the other side in the same way. Everyone can now complete it. After finishing the entire bangs section, proceed to make the hair at the back. On the finished product, along the top of the bangs. And around the back of the head. Add a circle of hair. Add a column of hair in the middle with vertical lines. This will create the effect of two ponytails. Here, I'll use a small sample to simply demonstrate the making method. Cut a piece of yarn tail about 50 cm long. Thread it into the sewing needle. From below the line of the bangs. Insert it slightly inward from there. Exit with the needle. Remove the sewing needle. Fold the yarn tail in half. Tie a knot. This completes one strand of hair. The exact length of the hair strands can also be adjusted according to your preference. Continue making the hair strands along the bangs. Try to maintain an even density. Make sure the scalp is not exposed. Continue with this method. Proceed along the back of the head section. You can also create a few strands of hair in front of the ears as the front hair. This will achieve an effect like this. The specific direction of the hair can also be determined according to your preference. Next, I will demonstrate the creation of the central part. Following the previous method, create the hair at the center vertical line position. After tying the knot, divide the yarn tails to both sides. Try to keep the middle section vertical. And avoid tilting it. At the intersection of the hair and the top of the head position, make sure not to expose the scalp while creating. Cover all the closing marks completely. Finish it according to your own preference. After everything is completed, finally, tidy up your hair. Put on a hairband. You can also adjust your hairstyle according to your preference. That concludes our tutorial on styling hair.